Young Dudes by MsKingBean89, Chapter 37, Second Year, Exams, May 1973. Exam season began at the worst possible time for Remus, around mid-May, right when the full moon was due. The moon itself fell on a Friday, which meant he was able to attend his potions test that morning, but he lost the whole week into sleep, when he would really have preferred to revise. More than that, the moon had thrown his magic off completely. He'd thought it was happening less in his second year, but as their exams got closer, whether it was nerves or the lengthening days, Remus found his magic growing stronger, wilder, and harder to control. The slightest wand movement caused the most fantastic results, and sometimes he'd barely finish speaking the incantation before a light was bursting from its tip, making his fingers tingle with shock. James had taken to saying, "Calm down, Moony," at least 3 or 4 times a day, as Remus attempted to practice various basic transfiguration spells and charms, which inevitably went too far. He'd thought that just doing simple incantations might help him gain some control, but this was apparently not the case, as he smashed the dorm room window a 3rd time, attempting to levitate his gobstone set. "Reparo," Sirius muttered, glancing over the top of his astronomy revision. The window fixed itself at once. Remus sighed. "You really need to relax, mate," James grinned. "We don't have any practical exams until next week anyway." "I'm so behind though," Remus grumbled, collecting up his gobstones and putting them back in their box. "If you're behind, then what am I?" Peter wailed from the floor, where he had 5 texts spread out in front of him, all different subjects. "I know I'm going to fail Transfiguration. My rabbit hasn't changed at all this year, and I know she's going to make us do something really hard." "At least you're good at potions," Remus shot back, "and herbology. I can't ever remember which leaves mean what." "You beat me on our last herbology quiz," James reminded him, "and you've got us all by the buttocks when it comes to history of magic. I've been copying your homework all year." "But you're the best at Transfiguration," Remus started, but was interrupted by a loud thump as Sirius threw his astronomy book to the floor. "Will you all shut up? I'm trying to revise," he yelled, standing up. "Like a bunch of old women nattering. I'm going to the library." He pulled his satchel over his shoulder and stormed out of the room. They sat in silence for a little while. Peter, Norman on his lip, looked on the verge of tears. James sighed. "Ignore him. He's just in a mood because he has to go home soon. Not that I blame him," he added quickly. "Parents like that and all." "Suppose," Remus shrugged, though he didn't think it was a good enough excuse, really. It wasn't as if he, Remus, was much looking forward to the summer holidays either. All right, fine, he didn't have to marry his cousin or attend weird, stuffy banquets, but nor did Sirius have to be locked up in a cell once a month, or hide from much older, rougher boys whose greatest delight was shoving your heads in the bogs. "He's not staying with you again, then, James?" Peter asked, nervously, probably quite looking forward to a Sirius free summer, as it meant he would have James all to himself. "Nah," James replied, sounded much less cheerful at the prospect. "He's got an open invite, obviously. You all have," he eyed Remus. "But we don't reckon it'll happen after the fiasco at Christmas. He thinks he'll be locked up completely until the betrothal ceremony." Remus felt a pang of guilt in his chest. He still hadn't come up with a workable solution to that, and between revision and the full moon, he hadn't even thought about it properly in 2 weeks. Judging by Narcissa's behaviour in the halls, except anyone who so much as looked at her sideways, she had not fared much better. "Well, if he keeps acting the way he does, he'll lose more than just his hair this time," Peter said, primly, sorting through his notes. "What do you mean?" James frowned, sitting up. "Saying it's all his fault?" "No," Peter looked alarmed at James's tone. "No, I just mean, well, you know the other day he packed all those Gryffindor house banners in his trunk. He wants to put them up in his bedroom to annoy his parents. Stuff like that's exactly what gets him into trouble." "Nothing wrong with a bit of house pride," James sniffed defensively, though he shot a nervous glance at Sirius's trunk. Remus didn't get involved. Personally, he agreed with Peter and Narcissa. Sirius was his own worst enemy a lot of the time. For someone so intelligent and magically gifted, he completely lacked subtlety or even forethought. If he didn't have to mouth off at every opportunity, then maybe he wouldn't have found himself engaged at the age of 13. Remus knew better than anyone the importance of keeping a low profile, especially when you were different from everyone around you. James, who was more like Sirius than Peter or Remus, wholeheartedly disagreed. In his mind, the most important thing was to always fight back. But if everything was a battle, then inevitably someone had to lose. And until he was of age, that was going to be Sirius every time. "Excellent, Mr. Potter," McGonagall gushed uncharacteristically as James transformed his rabbits into a perfect pair of fine red velvet slippers with a fur trim. Remus took a deep breath, steadying himself for his own attempt. It was a week and a half since the full moon, and he was finally back in control, though his nerves still got the better of him sometimes. He watched Sirius lazily wave his wand over his own rabbits, and they too transfigured into a lovely pair of black wool booties. Peter's slippers still had ears in the tail, even after 3 attempts, and left droppings on the desk. When Remus took his turn, he closed his eyes first, feeling light-headed, before finally uttering the incantation. The slippers were not as neat as James and Sirius's, but they were wearable, and at least no longer had any layer-borne features, even if they stayed a dull brown colour. At least he knew he had done his very best on the theory paper, in fact on all of his theory papers. He was satisfied that he remembered everything he needed to remember when it came to his best subjects, and that he hadn't done too hideously in potions, zoology, and astronomy. At the end of the Transfiguration exam, McGonagall returned all of the rabbits to their original state and sent them up and back to their hutch at the back of the room ready for the next exam. She then began to hand out sheets of parchment that looked like blank timetables. "You will be aware," she said, very formally, "that in your 3rd year you may choose a minimum of 2 additional subjects to take up to ordinary wizarding level. Here are your application sheets. If you will please think very carefully, reviewing each subject's merits, then complete the form and return it to my office no later than the last day of the term." The class began to murmur excitedly, and Remus looked down at his form and the subjects listed there with great trepidation. As they all filed out of the room, Peter immediately began to badger James to find out which subjects he would be taking, so that he could select all the exact same ones. "Muggle Studies," Sirius said, as they headed outside into the summer sunshine. "Definitely going to take Muggle Studies." Remus rolled his eyes. There was no surprise there. If any subject was going to win the general disapproval of the Black family, then there it was. "Do you think Evans will take that?" James scratched his chin. Sirius grinned. "Doubt it, mate. She's Muggle-born. You could impress her with your knowledge, though." Yeah, maybe." James looked down, thoughtfully. "Are you going to take that then, James?" Peter asked, anxiously. "Do you think it would be difficult? Suppose we could just ask Remus for help. Are you taking it, Moony?" "Nah," Remus shook his head. "What's the point? You lot can do it, though. Then maybe you can stop asking me stuff." He secretly wished that there was a wizarding studies subject he could take, so he didn't have to feel quite so out of his depth all the time. But, he supposed, that was the arrogance of wizards. "Divination. That's like fortune-telling, right?" James sat down on the grass, throwing off his robes. Sirius followed suit, rolling up his shirt sleeves. "I think so. Crystal balls and tea leaves." "Sounds like a right dose. Let's do that." All 3 of them scribbled it onto their papers. Remus did not. He didn't like the idea of knowing the future. Whatever he had coming to him, he was sure it couldn't be good. He tapped his temple with his wand quickly and whispered, "Legumcula magna," beginning to read through his options. "Arithmancy," he murmured. "Is that like arithmetic?" "Numbers, anyway," Sirius replied. "It's supposed to be really difficult." "Care of magical creatures. Dunno about that," James snorted. "Have you seen the teacher? He's got more scars than Moony." "Boy," Remus kicked his ankle. Care of magical creatures had actually sounded quite interesting to him. After all, he sort of was a magical creature himself. "I think I'll do arithmancy if you are," Sirius said, still reading his paper. "Will it be really difficult?" Peter worried. "We'll help you, Pete. Don't worry," James soothed. "Anyway, there are better things about 3rd year than extra homework. Ogsmaid." "You go to Honeyduke's 3 times a week," Remus replied, mulling over the possibility of ancient runes. "Yeah, but Zonkos." Remus grinned at him. He was actually pretty excited about the Ogsmaid trips. He'd never been to any of the protected visiting areas other than Hogwarts, and he was sick of hearing about how great Diagon Alley was. He sighed and lay back, looking up at the clouds. He would think about his third-year subjects later. There was no hurry. For now, he wanted to enjoy the end of exams and revel in the thought that they had still almost a full month before school ended. "Well, you're all right, Evans," James sat up suddenly. Remus sighed inwardly. James had been acting more and more of an idiot where Lily was concerned ever since the midnight feast. "I'm not a dog, Pa," a voice echoed across the grounds. "Don't yell at me like one." "Aye, Sirius," Mary's voice now. Remus sat up, blinking. Marlene gave a shy wave when she returned. "All right, MacDonald?" Sirius nodded casually, sweeping his hair behind one ear. He started doing this whenever there were girls around. Remus hated it. All three girls had ice creams, which looked like an excellent idea considering the unseasonably warm weather. Lily had even charmed the Chinese fan to follow her around, creating a cool breeze wherever the three girls went. "Give us a lick, then," James winked at her, lewdly. Marlene turned beetroot red and dissolved into giggles, but Lily remained calm, arching one red eyebrow. "You do look like you need cooling off." "Aguamente." With that, she aimed a wand at the marauders and sprayed them all with icy cold water. Remus leapt out of the way, but she wasn't trying to get him anyway. James and Sirius got the worst of it and shouted in dismay as their hair and shirts were drenched. Mary, Marlene and Lily cackled with glee. "What'd you do that for?" Sirius growled, pulling a strip of hair apart to glare at them, looking like a drowned rat. "Thought you lot liked practical jokes," Lily winked at him, before turning away and walking towards the lake. "Complete nightmare, that one," Sirius groaned, trying to art a charm on his hair. "That's my future wife you're talking about," James replied, dreamily, watching her go. His glasses had steamed up comically. "Oh, stop being so dramatic. You'll dry out in half an hour in this heat." "Where do you think they got the ice cream?" Peter asked, distantly. Remus smiled, lying on his back again. Never mind going home and betrothals and new subjects. For now, everything was just as it should be.